Heir to a wealthy family, boy has 5 sisters and spends his days surrounded by beautiful girls. He wonders how to find a girlfriend and believes in fate, but his personality doesn't help at all. Moreover, he is very passive with the girls. At some random point in the day, 16-year-old Arata asks 15-year-old Shin how they might get a girlfriend, but the kid has no clue and seems more concerned with his phone. The older brother wants to know how Shin ended up with you, and the younger replies that he just went with the flow. Not satisfied, Arata questions where this so-called flow is, and the younger understands that his buddy feels the pressure of being the eldest, but he could do with less intensity. Besides, he remembers that his partner liked a girl, but Arata replies that he just said she was pretty. Since that's the case, Shin advises his brother to be less of a scaredy cat, because, as the heir to the Shunji family, he can literally handpick any woman he wants. On his part, it's not as if Arata believes that fate will present someone to him, but it's even harder for him to believe that fate simply doesn't exist. In the midst of this conversation, the boys' sisters arrive. 16-year-old Aoka thinks this type of talk doesn't suit the image the family should maintain. 17-year-old Seiha comments that 30% of conversations among boys are about women, and 60% are about what to do with them in the moment. 15-year-old Minami calculates that 80% of guys spend time on the same topic. 18-year-old Banri notices that the girl managed to get her sums wrong with 3 plus 6, while 14-year-old Kotono stays silent. Aoka imagines Arata's pushing Shin to share more spicy details than they should about his relationship with Yu, and the older boy grumbles that he would never do that, although Shin quickly betrays him, adding that the guy mentioned Aoka's body is becoming more womanly. Faced with the kid's audacity, the girl sends her dog Velzakil to teach him a lesson. Velzakil bites the guy's leg, though Aoka would have preferred if he nibbled on the front part of the Aratorado. After all, that's what you get for having impure thoughts about your sisters. Enraged by the attack, the young man insists he would never think those things about the girls, but they couldn't care less, busy feeding Vel for his good work. Minami notes that her brother narrowly escaped being thrown into room 8 for what he did, but Banri thinks Oka should cut the boy some slack since it's normal for a teenage virgin to have such wild thoughts. Seeing that the oldest swayed her melons in front of her brother, Aoka replies that it's things like these that make the lad's imagination soar. The eldest understands why, given that the guy is surrounded by such beautiful girls at home, but Seiha assures there's nothing natural about it, since the terrible effects of relations between relatives are well known in genetic studies, hence coveting one's own sister is illogical from a reproductive standpoint. Still, Banri believes there are things in the human mind that science can't explain, and that even the logic princess must have fallen for someone once. When the nerd replies that she hasn't, the eldest teases her about the redness on her face and says the second and third eldest are real babies. Despite the mess, Minami thinks Shin is a pretty cool guy, and he rushes to thank his little sister for the recognition, but ends up getting a well-aimed punch in the stomach from the very hand that had just caressed him. In disbelief, he asks why, and the little one explains that she was playing a fighting game just now and got influenced. Aoka starts to believe this girl has autonomous motor nerves. Seiha comments that this level of strength corresponds to that of an Olympic athlete, while Banri changes the subject, recognizing that the little brother is actually handsome. Anyway, Aoka knows that personality plays against his looks, and that he does nothing but waste the genes their father passed on. Changing the subject, she wants to know if the two brothers are free on Saturday, as they had agreed to go together to Kotono's birthday. Shin says he only has a date on Sunday, so Aoka decides both are free before Arata can reply. Concerned for him, Kotono asks if the guy really is free, and he explains it's nothing special and can be rescheduled. Thus, the girls are happy, as the 7 haven't gone out together since the trip to Mai. The next day, the girls meet at the subway station and are looked at by all the boys around. After all, they are the famous 5 beautiful Shunji family girls, each having their own fan club and treated like a local celebrity. Similarly, the guys who can't take their eyes off the girls are dying of envy of those who live with them. Speaking of which, just as the girls receive so much attention, the two brothers are not far behind, and people drool over them as if they were something out of this world. In the station's bathroom, Arata finds it ridiculous that those guys envy living with the girls, because they wouldn't think that way if they knew what they were really like. Shin philosophizes that people usually only see the surface of things, and the elder adds that those 5 are the ruling party, and the men are the opposition in the house. They can hit them, but the men can't retaliate, and even their own father is always on their side. Shin recalls that he was bullied when he was younger, but he still lives with 5 beautiful girls, so people from outside still see this in an idealized and romantic way. After all, Banri, the eldest, is already in her first year at a renowned college, with the desire to become a nurse, and her gentle personality suits the profession, making her a popular figure. The second eldest, Seha, is in her 3rd year of high school and presides over the science club, besides having the best grades in the entire school. Despite being too cold and calm, this personality makes her extremely popular with some. The third, Oka, is in her 2nd year of high school. She's smart and quite athletic, being one of the stars of the swimming and running teams. Being highly respected, she's a favorite to be the next student council president. The fourth, Minami, is in her 1st year of high school and is a genius who has won the elementary tennis championship for 3 years in a row, considered by many as a future Olympic athlete. Her more tomboyish appearance makes Minami popular even among girls. Finally, the youngest, Kotono, is in her last year of elementary school. Kotono gives off an impression of perpetual vulnerability, with her gentleness and innocence, which earns her devoted fans and makes her the darling of everyone. After hearing this expositional speech about the sisters he knows as well as Shin does, Arata makes it clear that he sees none of them as anything more than family members. Then, Shin asks about the situation with Kotono, catching her brother off guard. Arata replies that they are siblings, and her once saying she liked him won't change that. In the midst of this, the boy looks back and sees a girl he likes through the window. Shin adds that the guys end up feeling jealous of their situation, but the downside for Arata is that his childhood traumas have made him passive with girls. At night, back at home, the eldest finds the profile of his crush, Lala Yokoyama, and thinks about adding her on social media to strike up a conversation. But he can't do it without coming up with a good excuse first. However, he remembers Shin saying he's too passive and shakes his head to stop being a wimp. Meanwhile, Aka knocks on his room door to check his notebook, as they are both 16 and in the same grade. Seeing that the kid organizes his subjects neatly, she comments that having a twin comes in handy at times like these. Caught in the prime of his youth, Arata can't take his eyes off his sister and asks if the outfit she's wearing isn't too light. Aoka is outraged, not thinking she'd need to worry about that even inside the house, especially since they used to bathe together when they were children. Then, she remembers that her brother was infatuated with a girl and wants to know who she is, as Shin only shared half the gossip. Once again, she argues that as twins, they should share everything, though he reminds her they are just fraternal twins, which infuriates his sister. Regardless, he confesses he found Yokoyama attractive, so Alka celebrates that she and Lala are on the same committee, giving her a chance to introduce the girl to her brother. Without wasting time, Alka grabs her phone to facilitate the introduction, but Arata asks her to take it easy, stopping his sister from doing so. Alka argues that the boy is the family heir and needs to do this for their father, but he insists on doing things his own way. Thus, she angrily closes the notebook and gives up on helping. Before slamming the door in his face, she assures him that he will never find a decent bride. In the midst of this, Kotono is in her room looking at a photo with all the siblings gathered, and her eyes fill with tears as she focuses on her older brother. By late afternoon the next day, Arata is already fed up with class. On his way out of school, he occasionally ponders fate and imagines what his life would be like if he weren't a Shionji. On his way home, he sees Lala giving attention to another guy. Apparently, they had arranged to meet there. Regardless, fate is fate because it has been decided from the start, be it the number of sisters you have or the wife you will end up with. On Saturday night, glancing at the time, his phone showed it was 6:55 p.m., nearly time. As he leaves his room, he finds Aoka, who, in a beautiful dress, remembers their father's saying, "Dress well if you want to be someone." Descending the stairs to meet the others, Arata reflects that fate determines whom you meet, how, what kind of marriage you have, and how many children you will have. The life you lead, from beginning to end, none of it can be altered. Realizing this, Aoka is arguing with Minami because Minami lost one of the AirPods she borrowed. Furious, the redhead suggests her sister should also train her mind instead of just her body, which also enrages Minami, who raises her voice and reminds the moralist that she lost a mother's brooch earlier that day. Shin tries to calm the situation, but everything only worsens, as both claim they no longer want to be sisters. Then, Arata raises his voice to end the nonsense and reminds everyone that they are all from the same family, no exceptions. Aoka doesn't want to hear a lecture from her older brother, but Seiha asks everyone to hold off because their father is arriving. Lastly, Arata reflects that, apparently, all the children of the Shonji family are at the mercy of fate. Then, their father arrives and sits at the table. With everything set, Aoka proposes a toast to celebrate Kotono's birthday. But the father interrupts to say something before the party starts, something he always planned to tell Kotono when she turned 15. Nevertheless, he prefaces by saying nothing will change his love for all his children. But getting straight to the point, the man reveals they are not real siblings. Arata stands up and asks what that's about. Then the father bluntly explains that all the children are adopted, and that he promised Chihiro he would tell the kids when the youngest turned 15. I mean, Minami and Shin are really twins, but no one else has blood ties. Arata and Aoka look at each other in shock as they discover they are not true twins, while the father promises to answer any questions anyone might have. However, as everyone gathered to celebrate Kotono's birthday, he wishes the dinner to be a joyful occasion, so he asks the maid Yamaguchi to bring the appetizers. Obviously, as the food was served, the mood at the table was a complete mess, and everyone introspected as they felt their entire lives had been a lie. After the meal, Banri dismissed Yamaguchi to have a private conversation with his supposed siblings, then gathered them all and served some tea. Although no one managed to eat due to the quarrel, Minami was the sole exception. As if there's one thing that makes sense in her life, it's Yamaguchi's food. Banri thinks the girl truly inherited that boundless positivity from their father, but Seiha explains they're adopted, so there's no genetic connection between them. Aoka leans close to Arata, understanding that their father did nothing wrong, though he could have picked a better time to drop this bombshell. Still, Seiha believes this was the best moment, given the promise he made to their mother, and Kotono's 15th birthday was fitting. This doesn't stop Aoka from feeling deceived, though Minami thinks people are overthinking it. The nerd asks the eldest if she remembers anything about the adoption, since she was 4 when Kotono arrived, and Banri assures her that he doesn't recall anything from that age, although he's acting strangely. The siblings notice and press the woman to spill the beans, but she insists it's nothing serious, and that even if they're not blood-related, she can't think of them as anything but siblings. Everyone agrees and cracks a smile, except Kotono, who looks sad, though she tries to hide it. When everyone heads to sleep, Aoka sees that Arata is also not okay. Lying in his bed, the boy reflects on what he just learned, but Banri's words convinced him that what really matters is that they've always been together. Amid these thoughts, a memory of Lala with that boy invades his mind, so he decides to take a shower to clear his head. In the bathroom, he spots a bra in the laundry basket and starts to understand why people think their home must seem like a romantic comedy. Nonetheless, even though the revelation is shocking, Arata believes their father hid the truth until everyone was mature enough to handle it. Besides, nothing anyone says is going to change things, as his lonely life surrounded by beautiful girls continues as always. In the midst of this reflection, Arata is taken aback when he sees Kotono already in the bathtub, and she saw the last thing she should have seen of his body. The boy wraps himself in a towel and rushes to his room from embarrassment, but Kotono asks him to scrub her back, just as they've done since they were younger. Trying his hardest to pretend this is just a brother-sister relationship as always, the boy does as asked, but he clearly needs to avoid looking at the girl's back for obvious reasons. Thus, to escape the compromising situation, he finishes the favor for his sister a bit earlier than usual and asks her to learn to scrub her own back. Meanwhile, Shin finds Aoka, who feels bad about what happened to Kotono, especially on her birthday, and believes everyone should support her as much as possible since she's the youngest of the 7. By the way, the girl asks how her brother is handling everything, and he confesses he's still in shock, as things escalated from 0 to 100 very quickly. Next, Aoka wants to know what Arata thinks about it all, since the two always saw each other as twins and have a special connection. Shin thinks this won't change, as Arata will continue being the protective and reliable older brother he is. Now, since the sister brought it up, Shin recalls that only he and Minami are true blood-related twins. From this point, everyone will see the family differently once this is revealed to the public. Moreover, it seems they can now marry among themselves. Check out these videos appearing on your screen and subscribe so you don't miss the next part.